Hey, what's up everyone? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we're looking at the Playmates 1990 movie Ninja Turtles. I'm just going to do all four in one video since the bodies are basically the exact same thing. The only unique things are their straps, the weapons, and the heads. And of course the bases have different names on them. They stand about 6 1/4 inches tall, not counting the base. So they're good size. They have unique sculpts compared to the classic, the cartoon-based ones. They definitely have more musculature throughout. You can see in the shoulders and then in the legs especially, it stands out. They definitely have a better sculpt in that regard. I'm not sure the heads actually mimic the movie as much as they would like them to. I don't know. They just look kind of goofy. But they do look good. They have all the same articulation pretty much. Another thing that drives me nuts is that the ankles, instead of having an ankle rocker, they just have a swivel here. So there's no ankle rocker at all. You just have the hinge and the swivel. Of course, each toe is individually hinged. So you could kind of get an ankle rocker out of that if you bend the foot and put the toe at an angle, but it's not really an ankle rocker. We have double jointed knees, nicely sculpted knee pads. We have a thigh swivel, which is completely redundant since there's a swivel at the hip. So I'm not sure why they did both of those. You can't even actually do the thigh swivel unless you pull the hip to the side and kind of hold it in place. And then it's still kind of tricky. But there is a thigh swivel and a ball jointed hip that mostly has a thigh swivel there too. The torso, the lower half of the torso is connected via at least a single ball peg, maybe a double, I'm not sure. It's not connected to the shell though, so that gives you your waist twist and your ab crunch. It's pretty limited though, but it is there. For some reason, they didn't paint the sides of the turtles green like they should have. They painted them shell color, so it looks pretty weird that the bottom half is not shell, or is not green. I don't get that. The shoulders are standard ball hinges, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, wrist swivel. Is there a wrist hinge? I don't think so. I don't think there's one in there. And then we have the thumb hinge. It actually should swivel also. So we have that, and then each of the fingers is articulated. It looks a little goofy at first, but you get used to it pretty quickly, so that's okay by me. The head, just a humongous ball peg, which is pretty limiting based on how they designed it. You don't really get much articulation out of it at all. It's just basically a swivel. So that's a little disappointing. In terms of paint applications, there are none. All we have are the eyes and the teeth, really. The bandana is a separate piece, so that's not painted. The shells are all a separate piece, so the only paint application we have is this mispainted part right here, and they're all like that. So that's pretty disappointing. It's actually really disappointing. That's one of the reasons they don't really look like the movie Turtles, is they have no shading, no spots, no paint application at all. If you remember the movie, the bandana didn't only have their white eyes behind it. It had some green going around for the eyelids, and then it had their eyes, and then it had the pupils. So that, I think a little bit of a paint touch-up on there would make a big difference. The teeth are painted, but they're kind of yellowish green. It just doesn't look very good. And then the head sculpts I don't think look very good either. There's no paint on any of the belts, even though they're all separate pieces. That's okay that they're separate pieces, that's a good thing, but there's no paint. We do have a little bit of paint on the bow here. I'll show you all their weapons individually, but it's really sloppy and there's no shading or anything, so that's no good. And then they put the holder for the bow straight up and down, completely vertical, which is not how it should be. It's supposed to be at an angle. You can even see that in the pictures on the back of the packaging. So there's no reason for that. They could have just as easily sculpted that at an angle. I don't understand it. Like I said, a little modification would help that, but you shouldn't have to modify figures out of the package. So that's pretty disappointing. I don't care for that. Raph, same exact problems. His face sculpt is a little better, but it's still not quite right. And the paints on the eyes don't look right. His bandana is a little orange for my liking. I remember it looking kind of orange in the movie at some times, but I would still have preferred a little bit more red there. His size fit in his belt okay. They're really bland looking. They're not bad, but they could have looked a little bit better, I think, but that's okay. And then again, no paint anywhere else. The shell is sculpted well. They're all the exact same sculpt for the shell, but they don't have any paint on them again, so that's a little disappointing. Same problems for Leo. His face looks pretty off to me. I don't know why he's got that kind of scared look on him. It doesn't look good to me at all. And then his swords, the swords are okay, the holders go in the right direction for the most part, but it really suffers from a lack of paint. Since there's all this kind of nice sculpted detail, it just looks really bland without the paint. And then lastly, Michelangelo. I think the head sculpt's actually a pretty good suit for him. It looks good, just needs that paint application for the eyes especially, and it would look a lot better. Then his nunchucks do actually have chains on them, so that's pretty good. I can't really complain about Mikey's weapons or anything like that, because his worked out pretty nicely. Not really much going on in terms of detail, but having the metal chains is at least a good step in the right direction. They do all have these sewer type of bases. It says 1990 movie Don, 1990 movie Leo, Mike, and Raph. For some reason though, Don and Raph have a whole lot of shading in theirs, and Leo has a little bit, and Mikey has almost none, so that's pretty disappointing. I mean, the figures are definitely good enough to pick up if you're a Turtles fan like I am and you grew up on this movie. It's definitely worth getting. Or the set is definitely worth getting, but there's just so much laziness in the design that it's really upsetting. It's kind of like Bebop and Rocksteady from the cartoon series. They just could have been so much better. So I can see a lot of people doing customs with these guys. Simply just repainting them will make a huge difference, and then turning Donnie's bow at an angle will fix him pretty much. So throw some paint on him and you have some really good figures. An ankle rocker would be nice, but it's not necessary. So they are good, they just could be a lot better fairly easily, so I have to be mad at Playmates for the lack of effort on their part. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.